We're going live at a weird time of the day. I found myself traveling, and I just made it to my hotel room, so I figure I'd check out this time slot. I happen to be in DC, if anyone wants to get a beer with me. Anyways, who converted you to Judaism? I converted with a rabbi named Rabbi David Lairfield, Young Israel of Greater Miami. Yes, this is a long time ago. He actually passed away 4 years ago. But yeah, anyways. All right, guys. So we're national here. At least we're continuing the party. Let's talk about Judaism. It's interesting. Every day I get messages of people who want to convert to Judaism now, mainly because they didn't know it was possible before. Go figure, right? Who am I? I'm kind of a nobody. Just stating the obvious, right? You guys make my job easy. Reform, no. Orthodox. I mean, I said Young Israel. There's no such thing as a Reform Young Israel. Why didn't God punish Joshua? For what? There are many paths to faith all over the world, not just one. To faith or to God. And I guess, if all these religions have their own God, then yeah, that's a path, right? The question is, what makes you a better person? There's many people who feel that you should just stay with the religion you happen to be born with. I don't believe in that nonsense. I believe in change, and I believe in new beginnings. If for some reason you were born in Pakistan, right, in a family that was not too welcoming to Christians or to Jews, you could pick up, just like Abraham, and go to a more rational, ethical, meaningful, reasonable belief system. And this is what I'm offering you guys today. Judaism. It's an option. But where does it say that Joshua forged a golden calf? I'm just curious. I mean, yeah, I know it's a weird time slot. We got the first guest of the day.
Hello, I'm back.
I don't remember you from before. I mean, did you have a different screen name?
I was the Jack.
Oh, okay. Welcome.
I have so many accounts, people cannot even know who I am. That's interesting. But how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you, sir?
Good. I was speaking, I think it was yesterday. I was speaking to my professor, and she's actually a Jew. So basically, I was speaking to her about the topic and stuff, and she was like, heaven and hell doesn't exist, but you just should be like a nice person, and if you don't become a nice person, then your punishment is basically dying or something. Is that the right concept that you follow?
No, not at all. I never said that heaven and hell doesn't exist. I said that the Torah doesn't talk about heaven or hell, nor our Bible. Right? The Bible is more than just the Torah. The other books of the prophets and the writings really don't mention heaven and hell. That doesn't mean that I don't believe in the notion. I think in order for God to be a just God, it's hard to believe that some inferior unaliver has the same end as Mother Teresa. So I believe in one. I just don't feel that God commands me or expects me to believe in one.
Interesting. Okay,
yeah.
So this is something different.
It's a little more complicated than other ones, right? If you ask a Muslim what does he believe, or a Christian what he or she believes, they have answers for everything. Just because their religions are based off of Jewish developed ideas. Jews believe in heaven and hell. It just doesn't appear in our source material. But rabbis have been speaking about it even from before Christianity and before Islam, and that's essentially where those two religions got it from. So yes, if you ask the average rabbi any question, he'll give you a direct answer, right? But if he knows that you know something about Judaism, he may tell you that this answer is just an opinion. This is rabbinic. This is from the Torah. This is a custom. So it's a little more complicated. Yeah.
Is it like basically the same exact concept like the other religions? Is it like different denominations or?
Not really, not really. Um, well, I'm not including Reform and Conservative, but the difference really between Reform and Conservative is not that Orthodox Jews are reading the wrong material or we're elevating books that aren't authoritative in Judaism. Orthodox and Conservative Judaism are essentially Judaism light, and they will not,
Mm,
unlike um, other denominations in Christianity and Islam, that they claim all to be fundamentalists. They feel that they have the correct path and everyone else is reading it incorrectly. Let's say a Reformed Jew will say, okay, the Torah says that the act of homosexuality is prohibited, but we'll say that that's for back then. We have to be more modern, right? So they'll acknowledge the same text, but they in some way try to change the religion to fit the time instead of the other way around. So it's a little different. Well, it's completely different than Christianity and Islam.
I think in Christianity and Islam they never said that actually. They said something like there's a verse where it says if you look at a woman with a lustful intent, you have to cut your eye and cut your hand and throw it away. And in Islam it says that your punishment will be in the world and will be in the thing after the world, basically. If you commit adultery with a woman without marrying her, that's what it says, I think, in Islam as well. I've never seen them like say it's okay to, commit adultery. I don't know where you got that from.
No, no, I never said it was that they would say it's okay to commit adultery. I never. It's the opposite. No, like you said, they're strict. Embellish the original command. The commandment is that there's a death penalty for committing adultery in the
Hmm.
Torah. But Christianity, like you said, states that if someone looks at a woman lustfully, he has already committed a adultery in his heart. Now the Torah doesn't say it. It seems like the New Testament is going a little further. So yeah, but it's you know Christianity claims to be an extension of Judaism. So they in some way have to try to outdo Judaism and say like we're bringing more to the table than just the plain law, right? Jesus said that Moses allowed you to divorce your wives, but I tell you, anyone who divorces his wife for anything marital unfaithfulness as or something, So yeah, whatever. But they're offshoots.
Yeah. So do you think the closest religion to your guys' religion is the Bible?
Well, our religion is part of the Bible.
Oh,
Our
so it's part of the Bible. So what book of the Bible? There are like 66 books, but which one do you believe in mostly in your religion?
So the first part of what Christians would consider their Bible is the Jewish Bible, meaning uh, anything you would find before the book of Matthew is part of the Jewish Bible. So from Genesis all the way to Malachi is considered the Jewish Bible, and that's the majority of what people call the Christian Bible, right? Because there's only 27 books of the New Testament and a total of 66 books in the New and the Old from a Christian perspective. So the majority of the Christian Bible, I'm not sure what you believe, is actually Jewish. I think you're muted. So someone says you have no authority to convert people. What does that mean? According to Jewish law, you don't need authority. You just can't be what's called a puzzle aid. You can't be a disqualified witness. Any Jew could witness a conversion, but I guess you don't know that. And there's something else you said. This individual, was his name? Anonymous. Clearly, it's anonymous people who challenged me here. Okay, let's see. Someone says Judaism is fake. Okay. Someone says, okay. So Mr. Anonymous here is a Lubavitcher because he wrote Yechia Melech, which is, Yechia Adonenu, Morenu Rabbeinu, Melech HaMashiach. Okay, so it says, I thought we don't proselytize. There's nothing in Judaism against proselytizing. It's true. Do Jews today proselytize, or at least Orthodox Jews? No, they do not. Do they know why they don't do it? No, they do not. There's nothing. There's nothing in Judaism that prohibits proselytizing. Now, is this really proselytizing? Just letting people know that, and you can become Jewish. That means you're just stating the obvious. You're not saying that you must become Jewish, or that you won't make it to heaven if you don't become Jewish. How is that proselytizing? So let's be accurate here. Okay, what questions does this individual have that he or she feels I'm ignoring. Are you here to teach your religion or talk down other religions? I have not talked down any religion. I think Christianity is good. I think Islam is good. I just think Judaism is better. So, yeah, I don't think you'll get that from a Muslim or a Christian regarding other religions. So I think I've been pretty courteous. The Messiah is real. Okay, typical. Do you believe in the Messiah? I believe in Maimonides' understanding of the Messiah. Clearly, the notion of the Messiah is a later developed idea. It doesn't literally appear in the Bible. If, at least as someone we should wait for, or the characteristics to look in such a person. So yeah, the notion of the Messiah, I believe in, is just a king. I guess one could say a political leader. But it's different than, I would say, the vast majority of Orthodox Jews. Why do you say I'm lying? You are not a Hebrew or Judah. Okay, so this is clearly a black individual, right? They make it all about race. Consider me the religious detox here on TikTok. Guys, like the video, like the live. If the more you like the live, the more interesting people will get on here that could finally put me in my place, right? So all my haters. So those who hate me, like the like the TikTok live and get some people in here who could actually debate. You only believe in the written Torah? No, I do not. I believe in Torah Shabbat Peh also. I teach Torah Shabbat Peh. I think I consider myself as someone who's a halachic purist. I teach halacha from an authoritative, from source-based Judaism, not Kabbalah, this and that. So for some reason, if you think I'm lying or I happen not to know what I'm talking about, then please invite your favorite Torah scholar on. Invite your favorite rabbi on. I've been doing this for a pretty long time, and I'm pretty sure they've heard of me before, and I'm pretty sure that they won't want to debate me. At least not on Judaism. What does Judaism offer the eternal soul? The notion of the soul even being eternal is essentially a Jewish concept. I'm not saying it's a concept that literally appears in the Torah, but anything that Christianity brought to the table regarding the afterlife, it exists already in Judaism. The same thing goes for Islam, and the same thing goes for your notion of demons and angels and Satan. All these things appear like in Jewish literature. Even the Satan that's represented in the New Testament, someone who fights against God, that type of Satan also appears in midrashic literature. I'm not saying it's unanimous. There's different opinions on it. There's so many different opinions in Judaism. But yeah, okay, fine. Okay, Hebrews don't do religion, period. Okay, this is cherubim number 9. I guess you're a black Hebrew Israelite. For you, it's all about race. For some reason, blacks get away with spewing racism because they're black. Whatever. Jews get away with a lot of things because of also being a protected minority. So, but I'm a conservative, so I don't believe in people being protected. Okay, let's see. I thought you did not want converts. There you go. See, I'm consider this live as an attempt to clean up the mess that many rabbis have made on here, and essentially by omission. When people stayed in front of Jews, or many Jews on TikTok, typically in rooms that debate Palestine and Israel, when Muslims say, well, you belong to an ethno religion, and in order to be Jewish, you have to have a Jewish mother, and while Muhammad brought the message to the whole world, the problem with many Jews is that they stay quiet when they hear stuff like that. Instead of saying, well, that's partially true, yes, if you have a Jewish mother, you are halachically Jewish, but they fail to acknowledge that you could convert to Judaism. And just by them acknowledging the truth as it appears in our source text, you'd actually be bringing so many people closer, right? It says, there's a metric that says, who's the hero of heroes? He who makes an enemy into a friend. But for some reason, we think that it's okay to proselytize Zionism and to just yell at people and cancel them and kick them out of rooms, instead of hearing them out, offering a rebuttal, right? In some way, in my opinion, confronting bad ideas with good ideas, and then bringing them closer from that perspective. You wouldn't even have to argue the legitimacy of Israel if you tried to change the way people think religiously, instead of just shooting down arguments that aren't even reason-based. The vast majority of people who support Palestine over Israel do so for religious reasons. There's no point in arguing with someone that in a specific topic doesn't hold truth as a value. That's it. There's no point. This is why you have to change their belief system, and then they will come around. But for some reason, the Zionists don't get that. ADL, good or bad? Bad. I'm completely against ADL. They don't speak for me, and I would say they don't speak for the vast majority of religious Jews. Conversion is a serious thing, and it doesn't seem like you take the proper halachic steps. What? I mean, what does it look like we're converting anyone? I've encouraged anyone who's interested in conversion to go to their local Orthodox synagogue and speak to the rabbi there. We're not doing conversions over TikTok Live. And tell that to anyone who says that we're in some way proselytizing Judaism. Okay, anyways.
Shalom, Rabbi.
Hi,
Hello again.
hi,
You still remember me?
sir. You're the anonymous, at least in terms of.
I'm trying to learn about anything, including Judaism, but I have much respect with you. I have questions, Rabbi. Let's continue from where we left, okay? Is that okay with you, Rabbi? So, do you agree that the the religion like Judaism should be inside the government? The government
That Judaism should be inside the government?
should like the religion and between the religion and the government is not separation. Should
Oh,
be like one, so the Judaism can control the government.
so yes and no. Meaning, when Israel gets properly redeemed and the Jews are
Mm-hmm.
in the land of Israel, and because God allowed them to enter there, then there should be no separation between um, religion and politics. However, in a secular world, do I want people who I believe misrepresent Judaism many times bossing other people? I mean, most Jews just want to be left alone. The average Orthodox Jew just wants to study Torah, provide for his family, and just live in peace. What they don't want are these supposed leaders in the Haredi world and the ultra Orthodox world making their life impossible, especially with all the scandals that they happen to fall into. So till we are redeemed, I don't want religious Jews in power in some way telling me how to do Judaism.
I see. So in my mind, there is like two things that is in my mind about this, Rabbi. So the first thing is like you have the last time you have taught me about the story that someday the Messiah from the Judaism will arrive and become the king, the Lord, or whatever. Probably right now not king, but doesn't necessarily king, but like leaders or probably like president at this time. So um if the religion is not inside the government, isn't that will be impossible? That's the first thing that I have in mind. So my mind also have another thing. The second thing is like there are many people outside of Judaism right now in the Holy Land. So that will become a problem if the government get taken control by the religious. And also from experience, other religion that has control over the government, it I haven't seen one that look good, including especially the Muslim,
Mm-hmm.
including the Christian, anything. Nothing look good when it is like the religion control the government and the government in the modern time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think
That's what in my mind.
I agree with you. That's the difference between when people claim to speak for God and when God truly redeems you. Um, yeah, so you see the Islamic Republic of Iran, Pakistan is also an Islamic country. These are people trying to live out their rendition of what Islam is. So Judaism doesn't necessarily function like that. Because we have a priesthood, we're communing directly with God. Islamic leaders, an Islamic republic is really equivalent to if, for example, Chabad or some ultra orthodox group took control of the Israeli government today. That's why I mean it would be a mess, just because God didn't really sanction that. Now all this takes faith, but I think that true redemption um, one sign of true redemption is when a religious society actually begins to work. There has to be that. It's telling us that if God is not directly involved, it will never work. Now, does that take faith? Absolutely, that takes faith, right? Because anyone could just build a temple and start offering sacrifices, and what? Does that mean that society is going to function? And I don't think biblical Israel was utopian. People made mistakes, people committed crimes, but did the society progress? Was there justice meted out? Was it safe to? I mean, what to live? Do you have rain in the season? Would you have peace? Like all these things are really what we're shooting for. Not a perfect society, but that being said, in terms of ethics, my gosh, I was talking to someone from Pakistan today, and in terms of the values that the countries are spewing out right now, I think the U.S. is spreading the worst values, and it's in some way giving a justification, a huge justification for Islamic countries who are a lot closer to biblical values than what's happening in the U.S. I mean, all the terrorism aside, it's a shame. America's on top now because we have more money. In terms of values, I don't think
Yeah,
that we're spreading better
morality.
than
I
Arabia.
agree. Morality, value. I agree with you.
So I think places like Dubai and are probably, like, from a religious perspective, spreading better values in this world in the U.S. currently, especially under President Biden.
Usually extreme creates the different kind of extreme. So the extreme like non-religious, there are like extreme non-religious people, create the extreme religious people. That's what in my mind, Rabbi.
Well, the U.S. was in the U.S. we had a good balance, at least in the, I don't know, like before the year 2000, right? I mean, even liberals were somewhat conservative. The vast majority of individuals were religious in America, but we had a pretty good balance. No one considered the U.S. a theocracy. It was still a representative republic, but it was spreading good values worldwide. Another place that used to contribute to civilizing this planet was Great Britain. The idea of colonization was a blessing that Great Britain gave to the world. I mean, look at India. The reason Indians are able to communicate today is because of Great Britain. You have a huge country like India, with dozens and dozens of, some even say hundreds of different languages, and they all communicate in English. The British instituted Victorian ethics, chastity amongst the people, and that's how they viewed themselves, as God's messengers on earth. This is how Great Britain viewed themselves when they were colonizing countries. Of course, the leftists will give you a different rendition, that they were just there to steal and to plunder. Not true. They were there to spread biblical values to those countries. But of course, I mean, history today is predominantly written by leftists. So by definition, the average student of history can't pay tribute, is not grateful for anything that these other countries did to improve the world, especially if they're predominantly white. But I don't really want to make it so much about politics. Guys, like the live, just so we could get more people in here. So like the live, share the live. If for some reason you have a favorite Jew in their life that hates my guts, please bring them on. I mean, I have an open door policy. People who disagree, get on first, right? To quote Dennis Prager. But I don't want to talk about race, and I don't want to talk about politics. All right, next. Let's keep it going, guys. You have any more questions?
I'm tapping right now. I'm giving likes. Wait.
Oh. All right, go for it. No, it's a shame that you happen to live somewhere where you can't convert to Judaism. There's an option out there of converting yourself to Judaism. It appears like this in the Talmud. It says that people converted amongst the nations. Now, you can't really expect other people to accept it, but I think it would be a nice gesture, being that there is sources for it, that you yourself could convert yourself to Judaism and start keeping Torah fully, even though you don't live in a Jewish community. There's nothing stopping you from not working this coming Sabbath, tomorrow afternoon, or lighting Sabbath candles, having a meal with your family. Thank God for the internet. Honestly, there's a lot of bad things that come from the internet, but there's the spread of good information has made it available for people to know about Judaism from the most remote parts of the world. Right? I mean, you could live in, I don't know, Samoa, anywhere, and just there's hundreds of thousands of hours of Torah study online that it's you could learn more online than someone, let's say in the 80s or 70s, could have learned just in yeshiva, just by the different opinions alone, the different teachers. This is why I was never a fan of this Jewish idea called Yeridat Hadorot, that if for some reason you were closer to Sinai, it meant that you were in some way more connected. Right? Now, in terms of maybe purity in academics, right, because you were closer to the source, perhaps there'd be less machloket. But in terms of opportunities to learn, heck, I mean, since the MP3 player came out and everyone now who has a phone has an MP3 player, you could learn Torah all day long and challenge the average rabbi. This is why when in Haredi neighborhoods, everyone started banning the cell phone, right? Most people don't know that in Haredi neighborhoods, you're not allowed to have a smartphone, so they have what's called a kosher phone. I think they in some way shot themselves in the foot, right? I think in Lakewood, they outlawed the internet. Although, I mean, they have one of the largest internet radio stations, so people still get it, right? They outlawed the television. But then since then, everyone just uses their laptop. But we can't let modernity keep us from progressing, especially when there's people proselytizing Jews every day to their belief system. I'm not saying they're very successful, but we have to stay ahead of the game. Okay, does believing that Jesus is the Christ, disqualify one from converting to Judaism? According to Jewish law, no. But the truth is, no rabbi will convert you if you believe that Jesus is even just the Messiah, not God. Unfortunately, it doesn't, I don't know why. Okay, now, I think I heard my friend Reuven mention on my channel that they're in some way converting into our culture, and to us, it's up to decide. Yes, rabbis have discretion on what conversions they want to witness or not. Okay, but that's not what the question initially was. The question is it allowed or is it possible according to Jewish law? Yes, it's possible, right? I mean, whether you want to do it or not, that's up to you. But yeah, if you don't believe Jesus is God and you just believe he's the Messiah, but you've accepted oral law, written law, and Jewish culture, right? And you can't say, well, believing in Jesus is not our culture. I mean, it means Jewish practices or the cultures that have arisen from Jewish practices. And then technically they could convert. Okay. You would have to stop believing God in order to convert. Okay, that's fine. Judaism was good until Christ actually came. That's actually not true. That's actually not true at all. I would say that Christians have done more on this planet with our literature. They've done more to civilize this planet than Jews have. Now, it's true. The Jews at least held it intact till Christianity came on board. Christianity may have done away with Torah observance in a way that they can articulate where their behavior actually stems from, right? They couldn't pinpoint it, but Christians do keep Torah whether they acknowledge it or not. What they consider works and what they're not bound under, if you ask the average Christian what is the law, he's going to think like, well, eating kosher, Passover, Shabbos. This is what he would consider the law. But he would not consider the law ethics, which is as much as part of the law as the ceremonial ones. So Christians actually do proudly keep the law. They just need someone to educate them. Like, you know what? Only because Paul made no distinction between, or he made a distinction between ethical laws and ceremonial laws. You have to acknowledge that the God in the Bible didn't make a distinction. So the same God who said to be ethical, i.e., don't unalive people, don't be a thief, and on, is the same God who said keep Shabbat, don't mix wool and linen, don't eat pork. It's the same God. So if a Christian is going to claim not to be under the law, then to be consistent, he would have some sort of green light to perform the ethical restrictions that appear in the Torah, and they don't. So they just need a little clearing up. And I think the average Christian that I dialogue with comes to that conclusion, like, yeah, okay, we typically do keep laws, but it's just semantics. Okay, Deuteronomy 43 times says the opposite. What does it say? Let's see. Kosher is more perspective. I don't know what that means. The Talmud can't make factual statements on belief, only laws. Yes, that's actually true. What? I don't know about factual, right? I mean, something could be factual. You mean authoritative statements about belief. Now, they make these statements, but they typically contradict other rabbis. So it's up to you if you want to hold by it. But this is why in Judaism you constantly hear, like in the frum world, we don't hold like this. We don't hold by that medrash. I mean, this is a common thing. Now, a bigger question, if you want to stump these rabbis, is what's the criteria for what midrashim we do hold by and the ones we don't hold by? And there is no criteria. They'll have to like stick their finger in the air and see what everyone else is doing before they make up their mind, which is kind of silly.
So, Rabbi, I'm still trying to learn more about basically everything, not only
Hello,
Judaism,
Rabbi.
but one.
Hi. Here, continue.
Sorry. Yeah, can I
Yeah.
just clarify what was in the chat with this guy? Because I think he's a Chabadnik, and that's why we're having the argument.
I don't
He
think
made a
he's using like, well, he put up Yehi and all this stuff, but I mean, he doesn't seem knowledgeable enough to be a
well,
Chabad.
he's making a claim that there's a factual statement that there's a Moses in every generation, and I asked him to give me a source, and he gave me Deuteronomy 34:10, which is the exactly opposite, where it says there never was another prophet like Moses. But he says, no, the Talmud interprets it differently, therefore it's a fact. That's what we're arguing about.
Yeah, so that for sure is not a fact. It doesn't say a Moshe. I mean, I'm not sure if the Gemara says this. I mean, it might be like a Sefer on Kabbalah, but it says that there's a Mashiach in every generation.
Yeah, okay.
All right,
But it's not Moshe, right?
I'm not sure if it says Moshe, because they believe that it was this individual, and I mean they believe Rebbe is an acronym for Rosh Bnei Yisrael, like the head of the children of Israel, and they also interpret Deuteronomy chapter 18 to be talking about the Rebbe.
Of course, but everyone uses that. Christians believe it, it's talking about Jesus. Muslims think it talks about Muhammad. Everyone uses that chapter 18 about their own prophet.
No, but I think, okay, Deuteronomy 17, for sure, they also say that it's talking about the Rebbe. We believe it's talking about the Beis Hagadol, like the Sanhedrin. They're saying, and the judge of that day, where they're saying, there's one judge every generation. Whatever. I mean, most people don't know that Chabadniks have their own understanding, and they don't teach it to people who go to Chabad. There's two types of, there's Chabad for Chabad, and that's what you see in 770 and the more like Hamish Chabad places, and then there's Chabad Kiruv, like, or Shlichut, they call it, which is Chabad houses. And there, they sort of whitewash it. They don't go into, they're not going to be with the flags and stuff like you see on Ben Yehuda, like the Mashiach flags. They're like, I like Chabad, by the way.
Oh, I love Chabad houses. I go to Chabad. That's 5 minutes walk distance for me, so I go there on Shabbat. But it's a completely different thing than the Mashiachism.
I don't know. These guys go to Crown Heights every year for like the conference of like Shluchim worldwide, and they're dancing alongside the same guys. And so it seems that in private, they're all like, yeah, we believe he's Mashiach to some extent, because some believe that he's coming back. Some people believe he never died. There was a group in Chabad that tried to remake the Rebbe. There was, what's his name? I think his last name was Deutsch, or Dietz or Deutsch, the Rabbi Deutsch, maybe Chaim Deutsch, who tried to make himself like the next Rebbe for Chabad. So there was a group that didn't believe the Rebbe was Mashiach, but it's the vast majority of them believe he's the Messiah to some extent, and for sure they all believe that if he was, that what he for sure was when he was alive. So it's an interesting group, but it's fine. I mean, everyone has beliefs.
I think that the Rebbe did the right smart thing by saying that there'll be no more Rebbes, because he was seeing it turning into a cult. So he put an end to it. Was saying, okay, no more no more Rebbe's going forward. It's the same thing with Breslov, because they don't have the Rebbe's, they're at least not going crazy.
Right. Well, they are going crazy, right? So,
Well, it's a different story.
yeah. No. Breslov are probably wackier than Chabad, but they
And
just aren't.
Nananach, yes, for sure. But the
Yeah.
regular Breslovers, they're normal.
There aren't too many regulars. I mean, you have to go to Sfat or a place where they're or I don't know, maybe Gola or something. But in Israel, like the ones dancing on the vans and throwing.
Yeah, those are Nananach. Those,
Yeah. Nana Nachman Nachman Uma.
yeah,
I mean, I
the
love them.
ones who.
Have trance and everyone's going wild and
I mean, it's fun. They're high all the time, but
yeah, it's also.
but that's not regular Breslovers. That's a minority. Those are the Nananach cult. That's like a side thing.
But they're the ones who make the most noise, so maybe
Yes.
that's what we see. I was in Meron, what was it, 12 years ago, and it was Chabad and it was Breslov, and they were going wild. So people are wild. I mean, it's fun while you're dancing. I mean, I don't know, to commit yourself. You remember when Matisyahu became like a Breslover for a little while before he dropped everything. Yeah. And I don't know where he is now. I mean, I don't even think he's like religious anymore. But I mean, he got burned out
completely.
Yeah, and I don't know. It's a shame, but he still calls himself Matisyahu. So there's a market out there for Jews who don't keep Torah.
Nissim Black is now a Breslover.
Yeah, no, he's been that. Well,
he converted through Chabad, but now he's a Breslover.
Oh, I didn't know. Are you sure he converted to Chabad?
Yeah, he got introduced by Skobak. Michael Skobak is the one who was the first to introduce him to everything. I mean, I actually spent Shabbat with Nissim Black. I talked to him a lot. And he was in town a few years back.
I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of the guy, and I've tried to interview him. I mean, I kind of think he's a sellout, in my opinion. I've been to his community before he converted, Seattle, because he's from Seattle. I mean, I went to Seward Park to convert. It's also like not a welcoming community. I mean, they basically kicked me out because somebody called and said that I was going there. I wasn't going to convert anybody. I was going there for Pesach. So then I drove up to Vancouver, and I went to it wasn't a Chabad, but it was called the Tzemach Tzedek Synagogue. I don't know, it was called Tzemach Tzedek, it's not Chabad. But it was a lot better. Seattle's kind of beat up. Vancouver's freaking awesome. It's just expensive as hell. Yeah, so I always kind of felt, first, they didn't allow his kid to enter yeshiva. Most people don't know that in Israel, because most people don't know that a lot of these Haredim are somewhat racist, right? And it's not just the Ethiopian thing, because that's one of the things people don't know, that Ethiopian kids in Israel aren't allowed to go to Chabad schools. Chabad doesn't accept Ethiopians in Israel, and because they typically...
Sorry, Asher, 1 second. I got to make a work call. I'll be back in about 15, 20 minutes, if you're still there.
Anyways, I don't disagree with a lot of your things. Some are very true. Okay, so I'm a mixed bag. I mean, do you agree with everything anyone says? Right? I know I rub people the wrong way. I don't know why. I mean, I think for like an Orthodox guy, I'm pretty sweet. Unless you're my enemy, then I go for the jugular. But if you agree with someone more than you disagree with them, or at least 80% of the time, I think that makes someone your friend, okay, or your ally. We're not enemies here. Only because I encourage people to become Jewish. Chabad believes in proselytizing. And they really believe in proselytizing, but they just believe in proselytizing Jews. And some believe in spreading the Sheva Mitzvot B'nai Noach. Okay, why aren't they allowed in those schools? So it had to do when the Ethiopians first arrived in Israel, that I believe the Chabad was of the opinion that they all had to reconvert. And I believe the vast majority of Ethiopians did not reconvert. I think it was Rabbi Yosef who said they either didn't or something like this, but a bulk of them did and a bulk of them didn't. But as a policy, they stopped letting any Ethiopian into Israel. Most people know that there's some bigotry in some of the communities in Israel, but it's not just because of the blackness. Guys, like the live, all right? If you like it, then TikTok will spread it more, we'll get more people. It's the same thing with Sephardim. I mean, Sephardim typically aren't led into Ashkenazi yeshivas in the vast majority of cases, right? If you're Sephardi, they expect you to go to a Sephardi yeshiva. If you're Ashkenazi, they expect you to go to an Ashkenazi yeshiva. There aren't necessarily Ethiopian yeshivas, last I heard, maybe in Kiryat Malachi or in a place where they happen to be more represented, which is also a big Chabad community. But yeah, it's kind of weird politics. But there's racism in every group. Okay, they don't speak for Torah, for sure they don't. The Torah is not racist, but there's some bigotry. I did make a video in defense of some people who owned a wine factory. I think it's called the Barkat wine factory in Israel, that made it all over the media. Don't forget, the media in Israel is run by the left. The vast majority of Israelis are on the left. Okay, the left in Israel is a little different than the left in America, but it's still the left. So they made it seem like these darn Haredim, they're up to their old racist things again, because they fired all the Ethiopians that were working in the wine factory. The issue with that is because I'm also of the opinion that all the Ethiopians had to reconvert. And it's not because of the color of their skin. It's because they acknowledged that in Ethiopia, they didn't practice the oral law, which means that they were what's called, every Ethiopian was a Suffolk mamzer. If you don't have the oral law, there's no way to divorce your wife. So there's many people who just, in some way just separated from their wife and married somebody else or vice versa. And because of this, the status of a mamzer is stuck on someone and you can't really remove that. So it's just safer for the person to reconvert. Now, I get it. The average person doesn't want to convert because colloquially people mistreat converts, right? I know I say it very easily that just convert, this and that, you'll be as Jewish as everyone. Well, just look at the people on TikTok who hide the fact that you could convert to Judaism. And when I myself, who proudly tell you I converted, truth is very important to me. Look what they say to me. I'm fake. I'm a Spanish or Latino Christian. They'll call me George or something, which is my legal name, right? In Israel, I'm Asher. But in America, my legal name is George. But they'll call me like, oh, look at Jorge again, just to make fun of where I came from because I'm a convert in order to disqualify me. So I get it. Converts are made to suffer. This is why we need more converts to change the trend. Okay, and to put these people in their place. If everybody knows a convert, right, they're not going to allow some jerky Jewish guy to insult a convert. Also, we have commands from the Torah: "V'aftem et Theyre, ger lo toneh." Don't mistreat converts. Love converts. But for some reason, I'm not saying that the average Jew does it, but the average Jew stays quiet when they see someone else do it. But that's the history. It's not so much. Well, in the vast majority of cases, it's not racism. It's more like xenophobia. If you look different, if you sound different, people are going to mistreat you. And as a matter of fact, this is what Rashi writes in the statement where it says, "V'aftem et Theyre," that you have the commandment to love a stranger. Rashi there says that this also includes born Jews, and that a stranger there doesn't just mean a convert. It means anyone who looks different, who sounds different, even someone who happens to have a Jewish mother, right? Just don't be such a xenophobe. Okay. Guys, keep liking the live, and then we'll get more people, because this is the way TikTok. I'm trying to figure out how they do things, but I think this is how it functions. I got this idea from Hebrew Hammer. I saw him out in some way doing this in his live. I love Hebrew Hammer. He's sometimes he should use a fly swatter instead of a hammer, but this is why. We have different styles, and he caters to a different audience, but it's fine. He's extremely knowledgeable. Okay, if Jews think they are superior, how can Gentiles trust them? I don't think, Torah doesn't say that Jews are superior. However, if somebody has submitted themselves to the ethical, moral training that appears in the Torah, clearly that person is going to be superior to someone who hasn't. So if you want to say Jews are superior, but anyone could become Jewish, then there's no issue. If you're going to say Judaism or Jews are superior, and you're claiming that this is only an ethno religion, then that's a problem, right? Because I wouldn't want to worship a God that does that at all. How can Gentiles trust Jews? Okay, all right. Okay, so again, any Jew who thinks they're better because they happen to be Jewish is not espousing Torah values. Okay, it's actually, in my opinion, stupid for someone to call themselves a proud Jew. Now it's different. If you acquired the title, right, and the only way you're distinguishing yourself is because of the effort and the merits of keeping God's law and tempering your sexual predatory nature, then yes, be proud of that. But don't be proud just because you happen to have a Jewish mother. Okay, I mean, it's like a white guy saying that he's proud to be white, or a black guy being proud to be black just because he happens to be born something. It makes absolutely no sense. It makes us look stupid completely. Okay, proud to be Jewish. Now it's different. If for some reason you lived at a time where Jewish people were in some way persecuted for being Jewish, right? And then you're publicly making a statement. You know what? I'm going to come out of my shell and say that I'm proud to be this. Okay, that's something else. That's not the case in America. Okay, people who typically say they're proud to be Jewish are at the same time pointing at Christians and calling them idolaters. So, yeah, don't be proud just because you have to be born something. Be proud of what you achieve in life. All right, who fits the criteria of Mashiach in our generation? In our generation, I don't know. I mean, I'm not here. First of all, I'm not a believer in the statement that in every generation there's a Mashiach. I don't believe in that medrash. Okay, I think that we could cultivate a Mashiach in terms of if we lead our children on the right path, right, and we correctly call out hypocrisy amongst our people, then we'll slowly begin to improve. Okay, now that's assuming you're even convinced the Mashiach is going to come. There's a book called Sefer Ikarim, famous sefer by Rabbi Yosef Albo, who there writes that, you know what, the notion of believing in Mashiach is not really such an ikar. It's not such a principle in Judaism. And I know the Rambam brings out the Yud Gimel Karamuna, the 13 principles of faith, but here shows that he brings out an example, at least, that in the Gemara, there was an Amara who didn't believe the Mashiach was coming. He believed that Yom Mashiach was the time of Hezekiah HaMelech, and Hezekiah the king himself was the Messiah. This is, and he felt that this individual wasn't considered a heretic. So now, post the Rambam, are we supposed to think that only because someone is not convinced that it's a real idea in the Torah that they're considered heretical? But just know there's different opinions. Now, this individual called me a kofar. I guess he said that what I'm saying is kafira. So let's understand what kafira really is. Kafira means to deny, right? And it's typically used when you deny something authoritative like the Torah or the oral law. To deny a midrash. So what's a midrash? Midrash is also known as Agadah or Agadata, is folklore and legend in Judaism. Anything that appears in rabbinic literature that's not of a legal nature has the status of Agadah. So only because a statement happens to appear in the Talmud, no one is ever going to say you have to believe it. Okay. So Mr. Anonymous here is saying it's the 13 principles of faith. Please make a distinction between the Rambam, who was a Rishon, right, 1135 to 1205 of the Common Era, and what Chazal actually state. Now, I get it. The Rambam's 13 principles are built off of what appears in Perek Chelek. But that's not telling you that these are principles of our faith. It's telling you what different rabbis happen to believe. That's it. So I'm not convinced that you even have to that you don't have to believe in the idea. I don't believe that you have to believe in the idea of the Messiah to be a kosher Jew. That's it. Should know that. Hold on. I'm sorry. I'm messing when people are writing me things. No religion is better than another. God is first and foremost, the most important. That's actually not true. What is it? Okay, first of all, you would have to in some way make the case that we worship the same God, that everyone worships the same God. Only because you claim to believe in a God, what doesn't mean that everyone has the same God. Some people's religion have a God that gets you to behave immorally, to attack innocent people, and other gods don't. So how could it be all morally comparable? That just makes no sense ethically. There's some religions that make you better. The God of that religion, right? I'm assuming people are behaving in such a manner because they're listening to the instructions of that God. That would be superior, at least ethically, to a God that gets you to misbehave. Don't forget, before Judaism came on the scene, people's gods, they behaved worse than people. So how could it all be comparable? It doesn't make any sense. Can I practice Judaism if I'm not Jewish? Yes, you can, fully, as long as you keep it like Jews keep it. I know there's statements, Akum Sheshavet Hayat Mita, Also, Goy Osek Torah Meza, that if a Gentile practices or keeps the Sabbath, he's liable to the death penalty. If a Gentile, well, there's a few statements, but that's only if you do it not in the way prescribed in Jewish law. If someone keeps the Sabbath in their own way and they modify it, that's what's not allowed. If they keep the Sabbath in their own way and they modify it, that's what it's not allowed. If you keep it like a Jew keeps it, then it's fully allowed. This is how I think the Rambam brings it down in the 10th chapter of Hilchos Malachim. The three Abrahamic religions believe in the same God. That is not true at all. At all. Now, I know that Muslims may claim that because they in some way have to justify their existence. Hold on. I'm scratching my watch. But it's not true. And Muslims are not the cousins of Jews. That's something they said. Of course, they had to, in some way, find a sweet spot to make a name for themselves. So they appropriated Christianity and Judaism by saying that we all worship the same God. The way you know what God you worship is on what that God expects from you. Being that the Jewish God, his instructions appear in the Torah. Islam says we corrupted the Torah. Their God in the Quran expects different things from our God in the Torah. How could it be the same God? Okay. I'm sorry. I've missed a lot of these. Let me try to make this bigger. All right. Ramadan Kareem. Oh, okay. So Miss Pink here is a Muslim all along. Okay. Can I practice? Okay. I write that. Let's read. No religion has a monopoly on the truth. Different paths, same God. That's not true. That's not true. What does that mean? Okay. Our God is essentially anti-culture. Who cares what everyone else says and who they claim to worship? If they don't follow God's instructions or not following the same God, how could it be the same God? All right. I'm out. Every rabbi would literally laugh at you. Interesting. I've debated more rabbis than anyone alive. This is all on my channel. Go to TorahJudaism.org. And there's a section there in the drop-down called debates, and you can see it for yourself. Okay, I'm a rabbi myself. I've been ordained more than once. I actually have 3, but fine. Don't call me rabbi. You could say they laugh at me, but what you can't even imagine is a rabbi winning a debate on these areas. I'd like to see them try. Let's go for it. Abraham was a Muslim since he was not a Jew and believed in God, so he was a Muslim. Interesting. So silly. Was Muhammad a Christian then? Because he believed in who he called Christ. It's the same argument. Only because Muhammad submitted to God doesn't mean he was a Muslim. Debate Manus Friedman. Get Manus Friedman to debate me. He doesn't debate anyone. By the way, I made a video defending Manus Friedman from this guy, Yaron Reuven, who also won't debate me. Let's see. You said you've had many talks with rabbis. They talk at our mosque. I doubt that most rabbis will walk into a mosque. And I know the Rambam said that you could pray in a mosque still. The average, at least Orthodox rabbi, wouldn't. Let's see. How can you believe in your religion is better and be a religious spokesman? I think every religious fundamentalist believes their religion is superior. What about Rabbi Mizrahi? I challenged Rabbi Mizrahi to debate. He said no. His student, Yaron Reuven, also said no. That's it. Do you believe Rabbi Eduardo's a rabbi? So, Rabbi Eduardo's a friend of mine, and he's definitely a teacher. I've never asked them, because I never ask people, who gave you smicha? It makes no difference to me. If someone wants to be called rabbi, I'll call them rabbi. I think he told me that he has smicha. Fine. Titles mean nothing to me. If you're a decent person, if you're a Torah teacher, if a Reform rabbi came up to me and introduced himself as rabbi, I'd refer to him as rabbi. It doesn't mean anything. For some reason, people care about titles. They mean nothing. In Israel, the average person who learns in kollel or yeshiva knows more than the average pulpit rabbi in America, but they won't get smicha, they won't get ordination in Israel because it's all about money. In America, people get ordination before they leave Israel just to make money in America. The title means nothing. What do you think of the Lubavitch Rebbe? I think he was a good guy. That's it. That itself is insulting to Lubavitcher. If I don't think he's like Rosh B'nai Yisrael, then I'm a bad guy. Thank you for your teaching opinion and all you do. Okay. Jesus fulfilled 300 Old Testament prophecies. That's actually not true. I challenge everyone to just look at what they claim these prophecies are. I'm not saying to try to disprove what a Christian calls a prophecy. Just look online for 300 prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. Just go one by one, and then come back to the live and tell me if you think those are actual prophecies. This is just a lot of lip service, but most people have never taken the challenge to even look up. There's so much misinformation. I don't know how, if someone claims to be religious, right? I mean, you could be dishonest in every other area in your life, but don't be dishonest regarding your religion. Because when someone finds out you're lying or exaggerating, they're not just going to leave Islam or Christianity or Judaism. They're going to leave God in general. So you have to be painfully honest, even though it doesn't make your religion always come out on top in that area. I'll tell you, there's a lot of problems within Judaism. There's parts of the Torah I don't understand, but I'm honest about it. But I still believe that it's head and shoulders above Islam and Christianity. I challenge you to prove that Abraham existed. I don't need to prove that Abraham existed. My religion is not based off of that. As a matter of fact, you can't prove he didn't exist. Perhaps you have evidence that he didn't exist, just like I could come up with some evidence that he did exist. But what does it matter? My religion stands. I don't know about Islam or Christianity. My religion stands on the idea that the Torah must have come from some divine source at the time that it appeared on earth, because of at the time that it appeared on earth, when man behaved like animals. It was the main book that has civilized the world, and it's still the main book. The main book. I'm not saying the only book. The main book that people look to for ethics in this life. That's it. That's the main reason to at least look into the Bible. And if you're an honest person, to pay tribute to where your ethics come from. And the vast majority of our ethics, at least in the West, come from the Torah. Again, please prove to me if Moses existed. What kind of person are you used to arguing with? Okay, I mean, this is not the way rationalist Jews argue. Why don't you like Enoch? Enoch claims to be the Messiah. I never said I don't like Enoch. I just don't believe he wrote the book of Enoch. And do I keep Shabbat? Yes, I keep Shabbat. What parts of the Torah do you find difficult to understand? Well, I'll tell you. Off the top of my head, I find the Akedah difficult to understand. I find the reason I'm telling you this is to equip you guys to be able to dialogue with atheists. The average atheist typically has disposable quotes in his pocket to disprove your religion. It's probably 3 or 4 parts of the Torah. And the reason I'm mentioning only the Torah, because that's the only part I really deal with, at least in what people call the Bible. And if you're not willing to acknowledge that you wish that it would have been written differently, then you're not going to come out on top. The best thing you could do with dialoguing with an atheist is be honest. Just be honest, because you just have to give some sort of response for 3 or 4 verses. They have to give a response for everything else in life. That's it. For everything else in life. And they don't care to, right? But what really fuels their argument and makes them look in some way sophisticated is if you have some religious person who claims to be honest and rational and reasonable, trying to walk around saying that he can prove that the Torah is perfect and divine. Guys, please. Who wrote the Torah? So the Torah is specifically the laws within the Torah. Jewish tradition teaches us that Moses actually wrote it down. Okay, the Torah says that he wrote down the 10 statements. That's all it says. Okay, tradition also says that he wrote 13 Torah scrolls before he died. Tradition says that. The law, no matter what Torah scroll you find, is intact. It's similar, with the exception of one law that appears in the book of the Torah scroll that appears by the Samaritans, and that's what makes or breaks our religion. The legitimacy of the ethical content there, right? Not whether Moses wrote it or not. It's a silly argument. Okay, let's see. I feel like you would. Hold on, I'm sorry. This is moving kind of fast here. I feel you would like the Meme Loez Torah. Okay, I mean, I'll look it up. Is that Loez? Who's this? Anonymous. People convert to Judaism of their own search for it. Not okay. That's silly. The average person does not convert to Judaism because the average person doesn't know you can become Jewish. And the person who ends up converting to Judaism 9 out of 10 times already lives in a Jewish neighborhood and they see Jews and may have figured out like, hey, that's somebody I know. I didn't know he converted, but it's not because we made it known to people that it's an option. That's all I'm for. I'm for an open door policy. Of course, I know my name's going to be dragged through the mud. I've been doing this for a pretty long time. I've been the victim of character assassination. Yes, I get it. okay? Because people lie about what I do. They say that I proselytize, which I have no issue proselytizing, but that's not what I'm doing here. I'm just letting people know that it's possible. If you want it, it's possible. That's it. Do you believe Jesus was real? I don't know. I mean, maybe. I think I could come to that belief. I don't think it's okay. LOL, that's a good joke. As a former atheist, I disagree. I'm not sure what you're talking about. As far as the resurrection, I think Hitchens does a good job advocating for atheists. Did you know that Christopher Hitchens was Jewish? Thoughts on the Talmud. So the Talmud is made up of two books, the Mishnah and the Gemara. The only portion that's really authoritative in Judaism is the Mishnah, and not all of the Mishnah, just the final rulings that are in the Mishnah. All the silly stories that appear in the Talmud, some of them are helpful and some of them are in some way disposable. So don't think that only because something appears in the Talmud that we consider it as holy as what appears in the Torah. This is what a lot of anti-Semites do, but just say that we don't hold by that. Only because something appears in the Talmud doesn't mean we believe it. Just know that. The Talmud is made up of Agadah and Halacha, and other things that are also, I guess, fall on the level of Agadah, like Minhagim, like customs. Okay, let's see. Guys, by you guys liking the video, it like doubled the viewership, so good job. I mean, just keep adding it. Let's see whether we can get someone here who wants to debate. Hold on. Is there anyone here who wants to debate? Is there an original copy? Again, this guy, mix some styles. Let's see how many viewers you have or subscribers. Not enough to go on live. Okay. There's no original copy. First of all, you want to see a Muslim. Well, I mean, this is for sure an Islamic argument. And that only because we don't have a Torah scroll signed by Moses, like I wrote this, that it in some way means that we have a questionable belief system. What's that even mean? First of all, any animal skin would not have lasted 3,000 years. Okay, the oldest Torah parchment we have, or piece of it, is, I believe, a copper or silver scroll that could have lasted this long. But I mean, Muslims also don't have a Quran that says that it was written by Muhammad, by the way. But I also would never use that argument to disqualify the Quran. These are silly arguments that people just repeat over and over again. It's like the average person who attacks Christianity only quotes Michael Skobac or Toby Singer, right? There's other responses. And a lot of these quick responses haven't really been thought through. So only because we don't have a Torah scroll written by who Jewish tradition says wrote it doesn't mean that it's false. Okay, it either makes the world better or it doesn't make the world better. I think it's more important to argue for the necessity of a good God than to argue for the existence of God in general. Okay, who cares? Who cares if God exists? Okay, if it's not a God who gave you an ethical standard to aspire to. Get someone to appreciate that. There's many atheistical Jews who put their kids in yeshiva. Many, because they understand the benefits. There are benefits in having a kid sensitized, especially at that age. Sensitized by ethical values, no matter where it comes from. But I would say the Bible, the Torah's ethical standard, is the basis of what every humanist proclaims about believing in God. Where did you get your ordination? There you go. People are, first of all, who cares? But I'll tell you, I learned in Aish, and I learned in Or Sameach, and I got smicha from Jeff Sedel, one person, Rabbi Kolakowski, another rabbi. I'm not even going to say his name. Fine. You guys could research those. What kind of afterlife does Judaism have? There's so many different opinions. Again, the average rabbi will give you one answer, and he'll give you the answer that his rabbi happens to hold by. I think that's kind of a dumbification of religion. The best thing that a Jewish or person or a rabbi could do is be honest and say that there's no definitive understanding of what hell looks like in Judaism. I'll tell you what the average Jew believes. The average Jew, right, and I don't believe this, by the way, but the average Jew believes that every Jew, no matter how wicked, is going to make it to heaven. Every Jew, right? Yeah, that every Jew has a portion in the world to come. I don't believe that. I think it's silly. And this is because they believe in this idea of purgatory. They don't call it purgatory. They call it Gehinnom, right? Which I guess it doesn't mean hell, but I guess colloquially means hell. It means, when Hebrew is Gei Ben Hinnom, that means the valley of the son of Hinnom. It's actually outside the walls of Jerusalem. they've made a nice little water park there. So they believe that Jews go to purgatory. They don't call it purgatory again, and that they spent. I mean, it says in the Mishnah, in the Mishnah Ediot, it says that you spend up to 12 months there. If you're like a real, what they call a real Rasha. But then the Meforshim say, no, we shouldn't assume that everyone's like a real Rasha. So we'll say Kaddish for 11 months, not 12 months, to give the person the benefit of the doubt, to be what's called Dan D'Chavzchut. So people say Kaddish after a close relative dies for, I believe, up to 11 months to get that person out of purgatory. And there are people, they perform good deeds in that person's behalf. Now, this is not completely baseless. I mean, I don't believe it, but it does appear in the small portions. I mean, it doesn't talk about saying Kaddish for the dead, because that's for sure a later invention. But there's a story, I think Rabbi Akiva or someone is walking down like through a cemetery, and then he sees this guy on Shabbos, right? Well, he sees this guy and his face is all charred, right? It's kind of like blackface, but a Talmud edition. And the understanding is there's a medrash that says that on Shabbos, the dead are let out of Shabbos, right? That the fire is quenched a little bit and people could, I don't know. I mean, it's like their rest day also. So then, but he sees this guy, like, I guess he was tormented extra, like in heaven, in hell. So then he's like, why are you suffering so bad, like here in the afterlife? And he says, because my son won't study Torah in my behalf, or won't do, things for God in my behalf in this life. So I think he told Rabbi Akiva to get his son to do, like, to say some words of Torah in his behalf. This got translated later on, post the 13th century, into something called Kaddish Tum, which now we call the mourner's Kaddish. That a mourner says Kaddish for his relative. Every time he says Kaddish, it gets him out of hell one step. I mean, they get what's called an Aliyas Hashama, like their soul gets one step elevated out of hell. I don't believe this. I'm just telling you what's typically taught. And I remember when I was yeshiva in Israel, the yeshivas themselves, they'll pay like Bachrim, kids who learn in yeshiva, to say Kaddish for dead people who died without religious relatives. Because these dead people, before they died, left a big donation to the yeshiva for people to say Kaddish after they died. I don't know about you, but this is what's called indulgences. So you're basically, before you die, you leave a big donation that you give to people to get you out of hell because of the misdeeds you did on this planet after you die. Now, of course, people don't expound on this like I do. I think it's silly. I think the only people who could propose such ideas so proudly or so confidently are people who typically don't bounce them off Gentile ears. Because if they hear just the faces, or if they look at the faces of people as they utter what they do regarding the dead, they could see like the cringiness, like you actually believe that by someone else saying Kaddish in your behalf or doing anything vicariously for you, it gets you out of hell. Well, that in some way justifies Christianity fully, right? But anyways, okay.
Okay, Asher, actually, since you were talking about afterlife, I'm curious. What your opinion about, like, there's some archaeological and historical talks about Sheol being like the original idea of the afterlife that all the like multiple nations in the region had, and it would be more like the ancestral place where you go and like you're with your like spirit of your family and like the ancestral spirits basically, and there is no like reward or punishment there. I mean, there is reward and punishment based on how you lived your life, but it would be more like you're cut off from your people or you're going to be with your people, right?
Yeah, so I don't know anything about that. I know Sheol means, in the Torah, it just means the pit.
Mm-hmm.
Other nations had this idea. It says Abraham died. He was gathered to his fathers or his people, and then he was buried. So it shows that there was something more But who knows? I mean, I don't know if that sounds very fun to me, right? I mean, I guess if you don't come from a big family, or
Yeah.
like you and an uncle there, Well, I'll
But
tell
I
you.
think it means more like, you're with all your ancestors versus, and then like the karet is then you're cut off. So in the afterlife, you don't get to be with like people you love, and you're alone.
So what's typically taught in the free world, and this is probably like the most boring afterlife I ever heard of, is that after you die, or you're going to be in a room with learning Torah with
Yeah.
Aga for the rest of your life. And that has to be the most boring thing I could ever think of. I mean, just with a bunch of old guys just learning Torah. First of all, it's interesting. With the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvot, he doesn't bring down that there's a mitzvah to learn Torah.
Mm-hmm.
He said that the mitzvah is to learn and to teach. Meaning that if you're not teaching the Torah that you're learning, then you don't get reward for learning Torah. Saying that there's no point in learning it if there's no practical value. If you're not instructing others, not to teach, because the notion of learning for the sake of learning is somewhat of a convoluted idea. The reason we learn anything is for the sake of doing, right? I mean, in Judaism, we call it, it's called lishma. You're doing it for the sake of heaven. What does that even mean? You're okay. I get it. Good deeds should be done for the sake of heaven, right? You're doing the right thing because it's the right thing to do. But there's tangible benefits for doing the right thing. There's no tangible benefits of just repeating like a piece of Gemara over and over again. But there's a story of a guy in the camps who, before he went into the camps during World War II, he was able to tear off a little piece of his Gemara, right? It was like I don't know, like 3 or 4 words, and he would just read like the 3 or 4 words over and over again, and this is what supposedly got him out of the camps and everything like that. There's people who believe this crap, that
Mm-hmm.
it's like a mantra, and when you do it just because it's, look, when Jews have made learning into a sport, okay, essentially, as the thing. I mean, in terms of educating the world with proper values, I always said that Jewish women should enter like Harlem, or I don't know, all these girls who are twerking, and teach them about modesty, right? I mean, I don't know, help people with their finances, tell people, help them how to save, right? I mean, not to sound too anti-Jew or anti-Semitic here, but offer something to the rest of the world, and then the rest of the world won't dislike you so much. Heck, well, they still don't want to take credit for offering ethical monotheism, right? They think even trying to articulate that what makes Christianity and Islam ethical is our Bible, but they view that as a form of proselytizing. So, and of course, there's something wrong with proselytizing in Judaism, but we have to unlearn that. It would be so easy. Here, look, I'm doing this for everyone listening to learn. It's easier for people to learn when there's a dialogue. I wish that if you have a rabbi, say, look, there's this rabbi or this guy who calls himself a rabbi on TikTok, who's challenging all the rabbis to come on the air and prove him wrong, that Judaism is in some way not against proselytizing. Any topic that you happen to disagree with me on, and trust me, there's many topics that Jews disagree with me on. Just bring your rabbi on here, and I think it's not that I'm going to convince the rabbi, but I think the listener would realize that I'm not making stuff up. That we've been trying things one way for a long time, and it's better. It's time to start trying another way. Not that I'm doing anything new, all right? But sometimes just by doing something old, it looks new, all right? Just by behaving how Rabbi Akiva and Hillel and all these individuals behaved in the Talmud, doing that today, it looks like nuance. I'll tell you, if Rabbi Akiva walked into any synagogue nowadays, where they would kick him.
100%, I agree with you. He would think that this was a different religion. He wouldn't recognize what we're doing.
Right. He won't say with the Mourner's Kaddish. He won't say Kabbalah Shabbos. He won't, even in the Shabbos table, they wouldn't sing Shalom Aleichem, Eshet Chayil, all these things. Don't be fooled. Eshet Chayil has nothing to do with your wife. Look it up. Eshet Chayil.
Yeah, it's Shechina.
Right. You're praying to the female aspect of the Godhead. But people don't know that, and they're suckers. Oh, in Judaism, every husband tells his kala sweet words on the Shabbos. Bull crap. It has nothing to do with it. first be honest and then give your opinion. Okay, I don't like rabbis who lie, and they know this. I don't know if the average rabbi knows that, right? Because the average rabbi knows what's called Art Scroll Judaism. If they read it in Art Scroll Feldheim, they'll repeat it. Okay, but those who know better and stay quiet, people call me a fake rabbi. That's a fake individual. Okay, and I mean, life's too short to be fake. Anyways,
quick question for you. Sorry, on the two challahs on Shabbat. My understanding, it's supposed to represent 2 portions of manna in the desert, right?
Right, that's a lechem mishnah. I mean, that's actually, well, if you don't have it, I mean, it's not so. It's mutter. I mean, it's something that you should do. Like it's to beautify the mitzvah, like of eating bread. You supposed to eat bread. According to the Rambam, on 3 meals, right? I mean, everybody typically. I mean, for 3rd meal, people wash, with the exception of Chabad. You notice that Chabad doesn't wash for 3rd meal. No, because they don't eat.
Yeah, I guess I'd never paid attention to that.
Yes, they don't eat. Most Chabads, I don't know what every Chabad does, but most Chabads skip 3rd meal.
Yeah, they don't do the one after Havdalah, right?
No, not after Havdalah. No, 3rd meal. I mean, 3rd
meal.
Yeah,
I know what you're talking about. You know, Chabad never does that. Yeah, 100%. Right. They don't do that.
So that in some way, I thought, I mean, at least how the halacha appears in the Rambam, and it's true. Only because the Rambam says it doesn't mean it's a halacha. You have to go back. But the Rambam says you have to eat 3 meals on Shabbos, and that's what we do. That's why it's called 3rd meal. Right? I mean, Sudat Shlishit is a 3rd meal. But they skip that. Also, the Rambam says that you're supposed to make Kiddush on the 3rd meal. And nobody does that either, by the way.
Mm-hmm.
All right, most people don't know that. So a bunch of things. This is why it's good to know the Rambam, just to see what most likely appears in the Talmud and what's done today. I would say if it doesn't appear in the Rambam, it's typically not in the Talmud, but only because it appears in the Rambam doesn't necessarily mean it's in the Talmud.
Yeah, that's the problem. He doesn't have sources listed everywhere, so it's hard to... Like, he has sources, but he doesn't always have sources, so sometimes he just says something.
Okay, hold on, wait a minute. Like, I'm trying to read some... let's see. Well, there's a good comment here that, I haven't read.
Oh.
See, I'm Messianic. I wish Christians know about the Bible. Okay. The Messiah already came and you gave him. Okay, fine. Well, this is true. With the average Christian, and I told this to Michael Brown. I've debated Michael Brown probably 5 times, and the videos are on YouTube. He said that in some way, remaining a Messianic or a Christian, because he's not really Messianic, in some way stunts your growth theologically. I love a good fight, right? I mean, I guess most people don't know. I was a boxer in Israel for 5 years, but I like seeing people fight, right? I would love to see a knowledgeable Messianic take it to an Orthodox rabbi. I'm just curious. But, I mean, you never see it. Because I think that when you belong to a belief system that it always has to start and end with the Messiah, it stunts your growth. And this was the case with Hasidut in the beginning. Now, clearly, not anymore. But Hasidut was first offered to the people that they call like Amcha, like the people of the land who didn't know much, to kind of bring them closer to God, and they focused more on singing and dancing. This is why in the Christian world, Assemblies of God and Pentecostals are typically not as studious as like Presbyterians and like all the doctors of divinity are typically not Assemblies of God. And I'm pretty sure that the biggest scholars in Islam don't come from the Sufi world. Now, yes, I get it. Hasidic Jews are very knowledgeable nowadays, but I think that all the singing and dancing, there's a price to be paid for that, right? Litvaks invented the unhealthy notion of learning all day, because Hasidim don't do this, by the way. But they'll do it when they're young. But most Hasidim believe in providing for your family. While the Litvish way is to send your wife to work and you learn all day. So it shows that they really learn.
But they claim that that's what Rabbi Akiva did, so that's why they're doing it.
Is that what they claim?
Yeah.
Because Rabbi Akiva...
I went to Litvish Yeshiva, so yeah, that's where the claim originates, that the Rabbi Akiva went to study. He married his wife, and next day he went to study, and then for 40 years he studied, and he came back, and he heard her say that she wishes he would study 40 more years, so he didn't even go in the house. He left and went back to study more.
Right. I know the 40 years. Yeah. Anyway, it's fine. Okay, so the Bear Jew says, what proves that proselytization, whatever, proselytizing is allowed in Judaism? What proves it? No. So this is not how Judaism functions. First, you have to disprove it, right? The burden of proof, if you're going to disqualify it, is on you. First of all, common sense proves it, but in terms of what tells you not to proselytize, right? I mean, you have to be taught otherwise not to spread a good idea, because it's natural. There's many times, I mean, how many videos when I send Reuven, that I find on TikTok, right? That we're both Dennis Prager fans, that we like the same Jordan Peterson style videos. If you find something meaningful in your life, by nature, naturally, you want to spread it. You have to be taught otherwise to feel that I'm not allowed to spread what's changed my life for the better. Now, I feel that the main reason most Jews don't value what they have. They don't appreciate what an ethical, net gain Torah has been in the world. If they really came to that conclusion, they want to spread it. The truth is, most Jews consider Torah like a yoke, like a burden. And they're like, why would I want to pass it to someone else? I have to keep it because I was born it. First of all, you don't have to keep anything. Okay? If you were born Jewish and you don't like it, just leave. There's enough people out there who want to replace you. Okay? Right? I mean, like the white supremacists. The Jews will not replace us, right? Well, there's Gentiles waiting to replace you, but they will no longer be Gentiles. They'll be Jewish. So this idea that if you were born Jewish, you in some way have to remain Jewish, you can leave. I'm all for washing out the bad blood in Judaism. If you don't want to leave, leave. Okay. I mean, however, at the same time, when you have the vast majority of Jews leaving, which the vast majority of Jews do leave, don't build a wall to keep new people from coming in. That's only, this is why these individuals who in some way look over such institutions are the ones who would run another temple if we build one in Israel. This is why I want there to be a separation of shul and state in Israel. I don't want the religious people controlling anything, okay? Because they're not worthy, unless it's like rational Jews, but it's such a small sliver. I don't know who's a prominent rational. Or David.
God naturally gave us separation of church and state, right? I mean, the Kohanim are not allowed to be kings, so that's by default.
How do you know?
I don't remember exactly where I read that, but I remember, and that was one of the reasons why the Maccabees are not included in the text, because they became the kings.
I never heard of that.
I'll have to look it up and then send you where I read that.
So it's true. I mean, the Maccabees were priests and they became kings. But the Rambam says that a king could come from any one of the tribes, but Mashiach, like Mamish, has to come from Yehuda. And
that's from the Genesis, I think, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, he doesn't quote Genesis 49, the Shiloh thing, but he writes elsewhere in his commentary to the Mishnah that Mashiach also has to come from King Solomon. This is
Solomon.
Right. I mean, I debated this with Michael Brown, because he's like, why didn't the Rambam say that Mashiach had to come from King Solomon? So I said, because you only know Mishnah Torah. In his Persian Mishnah Yot, he wrote that he has to come from King Solomon. Not that I believe that. I'm just telling you this is what the Rambam.
But why Solomon? I'm wondering. Like, I understand a claim for David, but why Solomon?
Because the promise was made to Solomon. I don't remember if it's in Samuel, when God says that, when he's talking about with the son that he's going to give David, and he says that his throne will be established forever, and he says that, it says that King Solomon's throne is going to be established forever. So you understand? I mean, that's almost common knowledge in the Christian world, because counter missionaries use it to attack Jesus, because only one of Jesus' genealogy goes through Solomon. There's one that goes through Nathan, which is one of the sons of David, but there's only one that goes through Solomon. So the understanding has always been that it has to be through Solomon. Anyways, fine. Okay, I have a genuine question. Why does the Talmud say that any cow is just there for Jews to use?
What?
I never heard of that.
Are we talking about zombie cows?
No. All right, so they're saying goy. I'm not familiar where it says that every goy. It's not at all. First of all, not all Gentiles we tolerate in our midst. We have to understand that only because the Talmud says something negative about Gentiles, we have to understand that it's not talking about ethical Christians and ethical Muslims. All you had back then were people sensitized by Torah values and people who weren't. And those who weren't behaved worse than animals. They were barbarians. And it's interesting that Islam makes a similar separation. Islam finds redeemable qualities in Muslims and in Christians, but not amongst atheists, saying that godless people are not to be given the same treatment as religious people. And by the way, what that guy said on that live that we were on, that Muslims are only allowed to marry Unitarians, is I've never heard that. It's so nonsensical. Then they're no longer Christians. The understanding is that a Muslim is allowed to marry a Christian or a Jewish person, that Christians are considered the people of the book, even though they're Trinitarians. Right? I mean, so
I
I was,
actually got two of my Muslim friends tell me the opposite thing, so I don't know. One said that you were right, the other said that you were wrong. So,
yeah,
and
think
both are knowledgeable. I'm saying, like, not just like random people.
so. I think that modern day Christians, modern day Muslims dislike Christians so much that they modify their theology to exclude any type of marriage with them. If a Christian no longer believes in the Trinity, then he's no longer Christian. Okay, I mean that's just the way it is. At least back then. Don't forget, according to my knowledge, there aren't many Unitarian Christians in the Middle East, right? There's the Copts, there's the Syrians, and they're all Trinitarians, and there's many Muslims who married these people. So, anyways, okay.
By the way, the question about Talmud, you gotta look at who made the statement, right? It's not necessarily that it was a Tana. It could be a statement made like so many years later by some rabbi who lived in like horrible condition, oppressed in the ghetto somewhere. So that's why he makes a statement like that, because it's just people striking out against oppression. You have to look at specific source and what he meant by his saying that. It could be somebody making a rhetorical statement and not like a actual authoritative statement. So Talmud's not like a straight up book to read.
Right. Because people are probably wondering why the change in scenery. I'm in a hotel, I'm traveling, and I'm off of work because of that. So I figured I try a different slot and see if we get more people during the daytime. So I'm currently in Washington, D.C. If you guys want to swim by, grab a beer or something, let me know. Welcome.
Hey, thank you for inviting me to your live. So atheist here, but it's irrelevant. I really do have a sincere question. So Christians will always try and prove, Jesus and the story all works together, and they'll grab these Old Testament prophecies and say, "See, he fit this prophecy, he fit this prophecy," and anytime I see that, I think, prior to him, had I read that prophecy, I never would have been able to predict any of that. What is your Messiah Is your Messiah supposed to be crucified when he comes back?
No.
Okay.
But it's I would say that the vast majority of prophecies that both Jews and Christians claim to be talking about the Messiah is not literally talking about any event outside of the life and time of that prophet. I'm not.
Okay.
Yeah, this is why I told people, look, I mean, somebody posted there that there's 300 prophecies that Jesus fulfilled. So then I told people, just look up those prophecies, because there's a bunch of websites that list them, and just be honest. And as you read them, if they sound like prophecies, because they don't even sound like prophecies. Christians just say this, and the average person is lazy, right? And they don't research it themselves, and then they join the religion, and they confidently say that I belong to a belief system that's been justified by literal prophecies. It's not true. It's not true.
Yeah, to me, it's a lot like reading Nostradamus. If you read the quatrain prior to the event, you never could have predicted that event. Instead, you have an event occurs, and then you have this pareidolia effect where you say, "Oh, that kind of fits the narrative."
Fact. Only after the fact. So I appreciate deism a lot more nowadays. As you know, the Jefferson Bible, let's say, he cut out all the miracles. Why? Because he felt that the biggest argument for God was ethics and not revelation. Anyone can make crap up. okay, or anyone could claim that this person healed that person. But individual moral training, the ethical stories that get you to challenge your nature, that's really what's worth keeping. So when people come to religion for nonsensical reasons, they'll leave it just as fast, and they have nothing to argue with, you know. But if you internalize ideas and in some way could articulate that this book has helped you live a more ethical existence, that's probably the best argument for religion out there, even though you don't believe in God. I mentioned that there's in the Jewish world, there's many atheistical individuals that place their kids in religious schools. Why? Because they understand that for children, it's good to give them ethical training very young. Okay, it doesn't matter where those ethics come from. Traditionally, religion's been understood as poor man's philosophy, right? It's somewhat easy to understand. It's very concise, right? Especially if you're a Christian, you believe in sola scriptura. But it's essentially a net gain. With all the mumbo jumbo and all the weird stuff out there, I think the world's better off because of Christianity.
How different is the Torah from the Old Testament that I've read?
Asher, we lost your voice.
Asher,
Asher, we
sorry.
lost your sound.
Entirely? Oh, crap.
Hold on one second now.
He probably getting a call.
I should probably get back to work then.
He'll be
thank you
back
so
in a
much for your
minute.
time.
Yeah, I actually wanted to ask you a few questions if you could stay, but if you have to go, that's fine.
Oh, yeah, I can stick around if you've got some questions.
Sure. So you said you were atheist.
Yeah.
Were you like, you grew up atheist, you were born that way, or you used to be a Christian, you became atheist?
I grew up Mormon.
Okay.
And, just, I don't know, all this, some of it I thought was so transparently written by man in some of the ways that they dodged around things. So if you ever watch South Park, they did this, the Joseph Smith story, right? And they didn't have to change a single fact to make it an absurd parody. It's actually a very accurate rendition of that story. So one of the early stories was so Joseph Smith is translating these plates, right? Writes it all down. His scribe Martin Harris is a fairly wealthy man. He's the one funding this, but his wife is opposed to it. So he takes these wonderful, scriptures, 150 some pages that they've worked on so far, 115 maybe. There's anyway, takes it to her and says, "Here, read this. Read how wonderful it is." She was a smart woman. She basically threw them in the fireplace and said, if he really translated the word of God from an authentic source, he can replicate that. He can write it right back down exactly as it was. Well, obviously he couldn't, and the church has such a convoluted explanation why, God then sealed that portion, and anyway, it was just so I just couldn't buy it.
Yeah,
I just couldn't buy it.
I actually have a friend who's an ex Mormon, so I'm pretty familiar with the story. I don't blame you for not buying it, but that's what I'm curious about. That's why I asked that question, because I was wondering if you're atheist from like overall perspective, or just the atheist from perspective that you don't believe in the religion you grew up in, like you don't believe in the Mormon representation of God versus the general concept of deity.
I would say I'm a general atheist. I've just not seen a significant evidence, anything that really sells me. I think from the Abrahamic stories, I see things like in the early 2000s, Andrea Yates drowned her 5 children, and she claims it was on order from God.
Sure.
And right away, you and I, we don't believe her.
Well,
She,
yes, clearly
she's
mentally disturbed person. Yeah.
clearly a mentally disturbed person. So why do we give Abraham any credibility?
So, well, this is why I'm where I'm leading with this, because my claim is not from evidence. I honestly don't care about evidence. Whether
Okay.
the evidence existed or not has nothing to do with my belief. My claim comes from a completely different point, and it's from the moral point. So I believe that really what's important in our life is the utility of life, right? Like the utilitarian approach to it. So the
Yes.
approach is, like I don't care what you're going to call the God. I care about what this God commands you to do. That's what's important. Not the legend, but what does God ask you to do? What is he asking you to follow? If you have the
I,
most beautiful philosophical story with evidence and everything, but this God is commanding you to do evil, then I don't want to believe in something like that, right?
I love your perspective on it, and it goes right to the other problem I have. So give any set of scriptures, whether it's the Jewish set, Christian, whatever. And let's just go with Christianity here. I'm a little more familiar with them. They have like some 3,000 sects underneath all this that
Hmm.
don't agree with what their manual says. And so when you say, hey, pick a manual that teaches you to do, good things, be good to others, be empathetic and kind and patient, and yet there's this manual that nobody can agree on, and if nobody can agree on what it instructs us to do, then what good is it for me?
But you know that their disagreements is not about the morals and ethical commandments. Their disagreements are about interpretations of prophecies and things like that. They're not arguing over what they should be
Well,
doing. They're arguing over how to pray, or what specifically God said, how to interpret this book or this book. It has nothing to do with behavior argument, right? And my claim is not about the theology. My claim is about the morality and ethics. That's why I'm asking you
I,
about that.
so from my perspective, most Christians will tell you that homosexuality is a sin. That to whatever degree you'll go to hell, who knows what. But I understand Judaism doesn't even have a hell, correct?
It depends who you talk to. We have,
Okay,
there's
all
a
right.
saying that
But
if there's two
anyway,
Jews, there's
there,
five
there,
opinions.
and some Christians believe that it does instruct a very cruel morality, that you can't just live and let God decide whether they sinned or not. You have to legislate against these folks. You have to, I don't know. What can I say? I think it does teach a morality and philosophy, how you treat others, or at least that's what they read out of it, and they can be very unkind to people based on their
Yeah,
instruction.
I agree with you, but I don't. This is a very modern thing. I don't think even 100 years ago people walked around and were looking for gays to oppress or something like that. This is really like a problem of like last 30 or 40 years, right? It's not like something that people in religion were arguing about or
I
focusing
think
on.
obviously there's always been gays out there, and I think
No, but I'm saying
Christian.
as far as like
I
this
think it's
becoming the
recent.
main issue,
Yes,
right?
it's recent because as they become more empowered to become vocal and out there, so now you can identify them. Now you have the greater way to identify and persecute them.
Yeah, I agree with you, but to me that is like one out of many points. So let me just get to my argument, I guess. Um, with with not believing in God, how do you ground your morals? Like, what do you believe that morality is objective or subjective?
I don't understand the difference between those.
Okay, let me
Can you
give you an
explain them?
example. Yeah, sure. So objective morality says that uh, something is right or wrong regardless of how you feel about it. Subjective morality will place it based on whether the people voted on a law, and therefore it's moral or immoral. Like, for example, slavery used to be fine and accepted by society, and it was a moral act. Then later we decided it's not, so now it's immoral. And it's basically, subjectivism is based on view of a person. So, like, say the mustache man, you know who I'm talking about from, I don't want to get banned by saying his name. So the mustache man in Germany said that gassing Jews was fine, and everybody agreed with it, and that was a moral action. But people on the opposite side said, no, this is horrible and immoral. And without the arbiter of truth to tell you what is moral, what isn't, who is to say who's right and who's wrong?
I think I lean towards objective. Things are just right or wrong.
Okay.
Although that's not an easy question, because when you get to abortion and you have to ask yourself, what's special about a human that we hold so dear, that we protect, and when does it become human? When are those properties there? That's a very difficult thing.
Yeah, but
So
that's
although I lean towards objective, I have to lean towards a lot of I don't know.
that's okay, and that's why I was asking that. So the question then becomes, if you believe that morality is objective, there is always right and wrong, regardless of our opinion, right?
Yes.
Who's the judge of that? Who tells you what's right and what's wrong?
Can it be a universal fact, like 1+1 is 2? Can it just be universal that you don't
Why?
enslave other sentient beings? That it's always
Why?
wrong without someone having to tell us?
Yeah, because my question will be why? Why can't I do
Yeah.
it?
I don't know. I don't know.
Right. This is my argument. My argument is moral argument. My argument is not evidential argument, right? So in my view, even if I can't prove to you that God exists and you don't believe in it, I still want you to act as if he does, right? Fake it till you make it.
What if I can? So that's an interesting view. But what if how do I say this? That there's that scripture that says, when I grew up, I put away childish things, and you children do what they're supposed to do on threat of punishment. Adults are supposed to do what they're supposed to because they've developed a philosophy and a higher sense of right and wrong, and they do it because it's right without any coercion. So I'm almost resistant to say I want to make choices just because there's a God that may frown upon me for it.
But how
I
did they
want to do
develop
something.
that? How did
What's that?
the adult develop that sense of right and wrong? Where did it come from?
I don't know. They
Wasn't he raised
philosophized
by the
years.
parents and teachers?
Was it Aristotle or Plato that used to talk about your inner daemon? We have a conscience. We seem to have this, even without being taught. We seem to have a sense of when something is right or wrong, unkind or kind, or otherwise against our sensibilities. At
Well,
least,
but if
short of
we're,
sociopaths.
yeah, like I'm gonna ask you this way: if we're innately good, right? Why do parents have to teach kids gratitude, sharing, many other things? Like, why do you have to, when you have a little kid, why do you have to tell them, say thank you, share your toys, all these things? Why do we have to teach that? If this is natural, why does it have to be taught?
This is a great question. You know how they talk about the natural man versus our higher thinking man. When we were on the Savannah Plains, sometimes aggression and greed may have served us better than a higher philosophical argument of what's better for all of us as a whole. So I don't know where to separate when a kid's working on some instinct, and I've got kids, and yeah, I've seen them be awful greedy and snipey, and sure enough, you have to tell them that they just don't get to behave that way. Um, and of course, as adults, often we behave such a way if we think we can get away with it. But I sure try and be better, and I don't do it for anything other than um, I believe in a right and wrong that I have a sense for, and I want to be doing right.
I understand what you're saying, but my question will again be, how can you say that this is not a cut flower argument? You know what I mean by cut flower, right? Like
No, sir.
that, like there's a root that that the flower grows out of, and then when you cut off the flower and bring it in the house, it's beautiful, and you can claim, oh, it's beautiful by itself, but we all know that it's beautiful because it grew out of the root of the flower, right? So the same claim I could say that the adult person in the modern society knows right from wrong because they grew up in the society that's been built out of the Abrahamic principles of good and evil.
I don't think those principles of good and evil are unique to any one religion. We have plenty of atheist philosophies have it. But you're right. I don't know if the conscience or whatever feeling we have of what is right and wrong doesn't spring from something I can't see.
Yeah.
But if I can't see it or talk to it or question it, then what have I there to then why am I relying on it or holding my breath for it?
Yeah.
So,
Just
first,
say, sorry, one last thing. I was just going to say, my claim overall is that the society that you have is due to the law of Moses and not not from anything else. Like the civilization we enjoy, the even this conversation we can have is because of the law of Moses, and because you could see how people behaved prior to that. We know
Um,
history, and we know how people behaved outside of that.
but we also know how people behaved with it. They even repenned themselves the slave Bible, and they used scriptures from that manual, that's supposed to guide them in to do the right thing. They justified slavery from it.
Sure, because
So,
there was
so
some bad people who used something good for bad. I mean, that also happens. I'm not
it does.
excluding humans from being able to make wrong choices. That's what freedom of choice is about. Right? Humans can make bad choices with good information.
Let me say it another way. Well, and I guess I've already said it, so I almost feel like, and first of all, I really appreciate your time. This is educational. But if 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 two people I don't even think that you necessarily have to have a bad person to get a bad interpretation out of the scriptures. You can have two genuinely good people that um, my father just remarried, and I was talking to her, and she seems to be a genuinely good person, but what she gets out of the scriptures teaches her to do some genuinely unkind acts towards homosexuals.
Yeah, but
So
that's an individual, right?
it is, but it's a. What I'm saying is, if the scriptures aren't giving clear guidance on being good, then what good are they for me?
I
I
I, I
I
think
can
they do.
sense being good better than the manual can.
But what I'm saying is, I think that Scripture does give you a clear direction on how to be a good person, and we as people take some of that guidance and corrupt it because it makes us feel better about ourselves. So like it's a normal human thing to create outsiders to blame for your problems, right? There's been outsider groups blamed for problems. Just right now, this is LGBT is the group being blamed for the problems. Just like Jews been blamed, just like Muslims were blamed, after 9/11. Like you always need a scapegoat. The scapegoat principle doesn't change. It's just the people who are being scapegoated change. So this is something Scripture actually teaches us not to do. Right? It tells us to love the stranger, to treat stranger nicely, not to treat
Yes,
stranger
it
in a
does.
bad way. But
Yes,
this
it
is a thing that
does.
people don't do. People, in
And
fact, flip it the other way.
overwhelmingly,
Yeah.
the conservative crowd in the United States, you know exactly what I'm talking about, would entirely reject that scripture. And I don't even know what their answer to it was, but that's not how they felt about refugees.
Well, I'm a conservative, and I don't feel that way. So, I mean, you'd have to talk to more than one person. Like
Wait, wait.
it's, yeah.
You would, but overwhelmingly, would you not agree most conservatives wanted to reject and vilify refugees?
I
Hold on.
actually don't want to make it political, but yeah, I think
Okay,
it's
sure, sure.
misunderstanding. Yeah, go ahead, Asher.
Okay.
Sorry for hijacking your life. Oh,
And it wasn't to pick on conservatives, just, I mean, liberals have their own issues. It was more to say, it's not just little individuals.
All
You
right, guys.
get massive portions of this nation who justify some acts that I find immoral or unkind
yeah.
based on that book.
Again, I don't want to make it political, but just I know I'm not going to convince you in one conversation, but just think about what I said from the
I will.
ethical
I
and moral
will.
perspective.
Yeah,
Thank you for
and I appreciate
conversation.
your time. Yeah.
And Asher, sorry for hijacking your life. We still don't hear you, Asher. Your microphone's not working. Asher, we can't hear you. Your microphone's not working.
I wasn't reading some of the things people have been typing in while we were talking. I was talking to you directly. Someone mentioned,
Guys,
and
I
I
have to
agree
go.
with them, church
We're
groups
going to
are
continue this
very,
later.
very good at helping